Today's challenge to gambling is no longer one that's dominated by those religious Puritans or the economic secularists of the past. Rather, suggests to you that today's and very much tomorrow's challenge comes from another group, the public health community. Unlike its puritanical predecessors, the public health community isn't worried about who is and who isn't going to heaven or to hell. Rather, it fears how gambling adversely affects individuals, families, and communities. Because the public health community doesn't see anything noble in the passion of the gambler. It judges gambling as some atheists judge religion, by its excesses. So you strip away, I suggest, the scientific window dressing, and the public health view believes that others shouldn't be allowed to gamble as freely as they may wish, because gambling is bad. Gambling is bad behavior. It's what economists call a merit bad. That's something that's bad per se. Now, much of what we read in the gambling literature is the result of so many researchers and authors who view gambling as a merit bad. Now, unsurprisingly, gamblers themselves have great difficulty defending themselves effectively against this public health critique, as do, more surprisingly perhaps, those who provide them with the opportunity to gamble. The industry's defense is traditionally focused on gambling's potential to create jobs and the potential to produce tax revenue. Now that's, I believe, a necessary argument, but it's not a sufficient argument to withstand what is a carefully choreographed, long-term public health campaign against gambling and against your industry. So therefore, I'd like to respectfully suggest to you that the gambling industry needs to alter the average policymaker's perception of gambling. The perception today is that your business is one that on its best days is economically ambiguous and on all other days socially detrimental, which is a fancy way of me saying that in my unsolicited view, the industry needs to tell a new and it needs to tell a better story about the products it sells and the services it provides. But the good news, and there is lots of good news, the good news is that you don't need to spin the evidence or dodge around the issues to tell a new and a better gambling story. For the very good news is that you actually have a very good story to tell. The industry simply, but critically, needs to get its arms around all of the available evidence, figure out how best to articulate this new narrative, and how best to encourage others to do likewise. I'd like to spend the rest of the time that I've been allotted highlighting what myself and my co-author refer to, very modestly of course, as the 10 gambling truths that, based on the research we've done, we believe should comprise this new narrative. The first truth is that much public health research on the negative effects of gambling is highly questionable, to put it politely, whether you're looking at it empirically, methodologically, or scientifically. The studies upon which so much, sadly, of our gambling policy is decided are really advocacy pieces rather than scientific inquiries, and the policy-making debate should reflect that fact. The second truth is that the medicalization of gambling, which is what the public health establishment is attempting to achieve, as it's done so with tobacco and as it's currently trying to do with food and with alcohol, poses a very serious professional danger to many of you in this room today. Why so dangerous? Because today's public health model assumes the fundamental abnormality of the gambler. Now, as this illness of gambling involves a progressive loss of control, legally the consumer, the gambler, can't be held responsible for his or her actions. Therefore, responsibility for the harm caused must lie with, guess who? The producer, that is the gambling industry. So it follows logically, doesn't it, that the industry has a public duty, at a minimum, to accept regulation, to limit potential harm, and to ameliorate any negative side effects caused by its product. The third truth is that problem gambling is not a disease, and therefore should be understood in behavioral, not biological terms. The fourth truth is that the most widely used problem gambling screening instruments should come with their very own warning labels, considering that the statistics they produce are based upon such arbitrary assumptions and such faulty research techniques. For the fifth truth is that this voluntary, this consensus-driven approach may sow the seeds of the industry's own destruction. You see, it's not at all clear that any individual or any group really knows how to deal with the problem. What we're suggesting to you then is a sixth truth, which is that the untold story of the public health campaign's increasingly successful push for well and obviously frequently industry-funded treatment programs is that most of these programs do not work, and they do not work most of the time. The seventh truth is that the typical social cost estimate you read in the newspapers overestimates the true social cost of problem gambling by a 3-to-1 ratio. That is quite a large mistake, especially when it's repeated day in and day out. The eighth truth is that the earlier someone starts to gamble, the better. And I'm not referring to the bottom line of the industry. What I'm referring to is the fact that the likelihood of one developing a gambling problem increases if one starts gambling later in life. The ninth truth is our book's man bites dog story. Gambling's positive impact upon public health. I have to say it at least twice because most people think I've simply made a mistake. What's been unpublicized and therefore unappreciated are the significant social benefits of gambling. Principal benefit, the diversion and pleasure that gambling provides untold millions of people. To critics, it's an infuriating scam. I'm sure you've heard this many, many times. But I'm suggesting that it's reasonable, in fact, it's perfectly rational to assume that gamblers know they'll probably lose, but they're happy to take that chance for the pleasure of playing and the chance of coming out ahead. Now the 10th, no need to applaud, although we're just about there. I know you're dying to. The 10th and final truth, has to be the final truth of this because we end at 10, is our gift to any of you who are supporters of the Prime Minister's Big Society project. Studies commissioned by the British government, the American government, and the Swedish government, respectively, find gamblers to be virtually indistinguishable from non-gamblers, with one small but, if you're a big society person, notable exception. Gamblers, it turns out, are more sociable, are more neighborly, and are more involved in community activities than their non-gambling peers. Furthermore, gambling industry employees donate more of their own money to charitable organizations, and they contribute more volunteer time than their occupational peers in the non-gambling sectors. It seems gamblers are the big society.